So we're changing course quite a bit in this talk versus what we heard this morning, but I absolutely loved and was inspired this morning. Thank you all for being here and helping us feel that connection and that sameness, that even though we're all doing our own things and we all teach probably quite differently because of our own experiences in life, we still have this connection with being piano teachers and pianists and musicians, as well as just being human. And so today I would like to talk about incorporating music listening into our lessons and into our lives as people and as teachers, as well as incorporating lessons and listening for our students as well. So imagine being a parent, which bless you all who have children, because I don't, and I just bow down to those of you who do, because the patience it takes is incredible. There's very high respect there. Imagine trying to teach your child to read without ever reading them a book. Do you think that would work? Maybe, maybe not. They might learn to read words, they might learn to read sentences, but they wouldn't have the satisfaction of hearing a story and hearing a beginning and hearing the conflict and hearing the ending and the resolution and being satisfied through our storytelling if we never read them a book. Oh no. Oh dear. I did a bad thing, hold on. Where did that go? Okay, well, we'll just go back to that. Oh! Oh! Where did that go? Did I like... No, we don't want that. Because that's not me. Maybe go here. Oh, no, that's not me either. That's not me. No. Oh gosh. We're going to have to go through this again. I'm sorry, guys.
We're good. We'll take a deep breath and learn to, right?
Because the anxiety is coming at me. And as I said, I'm starting to sweat if you can't see it.
But that's all right. That's good. Breathe. Tap.
Yeah.
Yeah, some EFT tapping.
Oh yeah, that's it.
Everything's fine.
Thank you. So no problem. Keyboard. That's my Okay, emotional freedom. We will just. So she can on her own, or
No, she's certified
I
to
hate to
private personally.
Yeah, maybe.
just get special hints.
For a year. Very
Okay.
intensive training for a year. So, and what we did here was a very light portion of it. But she can really go in and she's done several sessions.
That's okay. We'll just leave it at that, and then our time.
Sometimes sessions are.
Oh, Christian, thanks for being. I'm usually pretty good. Technology minute, early is not my day.
It's just fine.
So, also, imagine trying to teach your child how to draw, or how to paint, how to be a great artist of some kind, without ever seeing a piece of artwork, without ever seeing a still life, or without ever seeing any great painters. The same thing goes for music. Are our students hearing great musicians besides us? We'll take that, right? One of my students lovingly said, you know, when you play for me, you have like this artist face. Yeah, probably. But I'm sure we do play for our students, and that's wonderful. But have they ever heard anybody else play? Have they ever actually been to a 2-hour concert? Heaven forbid we ask them to remember or sit there quietly for more than 47 seconds, right? Maybe they need that training to be able to go. We have a musician in town. She's the concertmaster of our Southwest Symphony. And I have been so impressed with her parenting because her children at age 3 I have watched each one of her 4 children sat through an entire symphony concert at age 3 with no toys, no books, nothing, and they sit there intently. Who are they? They are special children, I do know that, but that's pretty cool. Now, do we share our passion with our students? If you have passion for what we're teaching or what you're teaching, your students will gain passion and they will learn excitement and joy if you share that with them. I kind of had a very cool experience just yesterday. I teach one class of Music 1010 or like general ed music appreciation on campus. And this semester is so cool and so fun. I have all girls in my class. And we've talked about what they're experiencing in class a little bit, and they're like, we're so free. Like, I can answer the questions because there's no cute boys in this class, and I can come in my pajamas or whatever because there's no pressure on them. It's so weird and interesting. And so we just have a jolly old time. And I was coming out of class yesterday, and I have this other college student come up to me, and she's like, what are you teaching in that class? And I'm like, oh, this is Music 1010, blah, blah, blah. And she's like, you guys always come out of class like you're having fun. Cool? Like, that was super cool because I'm just like, I just sit there and lecture and talk about history, but I do love history a lot. And so, I'm sharing that with my students, and hopefully you're sharing your passions with your students through listening. Okay, falling in love. So, why do we want our students to listen to music? Are your students falling in love with their instrument? With their sound? Are they falling in love with the pieces that they're playing? I came across this pianist about a year ago. I am not going to attempt to say her last name. She's from Japan, but her first name is Hiromi, and I think she knows that her last name is difficult, so you can just find her as Hiromi the pianist online. And I realized that she is a jazz musician primarily. And so this performance is from a talk show in Japan that is literally called The Tom and Jerry Show. I love that reference. I'm sure they meant it, or maybe they didn't mean it and it just happened to be Looney Tunes reference. But I want us to watch her, and I want you to see, have your students ever expressed the joy or happiness that she does when she's playing? Watch her facial expressions. Oh, wasn't that such a yummy chord? You knew she enjoyed it by listen to the whole thing. But I can honestly say, I think I've probably only seen that kind of joy from Cindy's son, McKay, out of 20, 30 years of teaching. And as I was doing this presentation, I'm like, I need to work on that. I need to work on that with my students. And maybe we need to talk about, what do you think this chord sounds like? Is this joy? Do you like what this sounds like? Do you not like it? Does it make you cringe? Does it make you, or is it just the best thing ever? Now, I know I say that quite frequently to my students, and they all think I'm as weird as crazy lady. But maybe that's something to aspire to, right? Now, jazz has a different affect than classical music, and a lot of jazz pianists tend to be kind of frontmen, like Duke Ellington and stuff, where they are really actually playing to the audience, and there is a very physical entertainment as well as the musical entertainment that is not there as an expectation in the classical world. So I understand that, but maybe inside, in the inner game, we can have that joy happening during our performances. Okay. Now, along with listening, they also learn what different chords mean to other musicians. And then they can internalize, what does this chord mean? What does this chord sound like in this piece versus this piece? And they start hearing the expressions, and they start feeling it inside. And I hope that you have all had the great joy of having a few students who just feel it. And I have learned in the last few years, unfortunately or fortunately, I think I am one of those people. And I have a student right now who, no matter how many times we talk about dynamics, no matter how many times we talk about the story, and I even make her cry with her stories, like literally, because we bring up these hard things in her life, and she's super depressed about all of it. It's still hard getting her to have that come out in her playing sometimes. But it's something to work towards so that we all connect, hopefully, eventually, with all of our pieces. Because I'm not teaching college students. I'm mostly teaching little pupils. And so it's a little bit different world than talking about expression and internalization as a college student, right? Okay. And then a great passion of mine is also listening to music can help expose our students and ourselves to other cultures and things that they may not encounter otherwise. I've had the great pleasure of living a life where I actually have been influenced by quite a few cultures, and history has always been this interest of mine. And so I think I had an experience with a student earlier this year that reiterated to me that we need to be talking about culture and experience culture with things that are around us, that are immediate cultures, and then cultures that are farther away. And I'm not going to get political, but I do really like to watch the news like a lot, and I have like debates with my 85-year-old father every Sunday about what's happening in the news and all that stuff, and he thinks I'm a horrible liberal female, which is kind of not true, but it's really funny. And sometimes I just egg him on because it's fun. But the more we go through this history and live this life and what's going on in the news, I become more and more passionate about teaching culture to my students so that they can appreciate others and whatever that word others means to them. Any culture that's just different than their own, and learning how to be tolerant and appreciate others, whatever that is. Yes, go. And I'm actually going to skip this next slide. Yeah, and then skip it again. Okay, yep, okay. I'm actually not quite sure how old I am in this picture. I am probably approximately 9. This was not my first teacher. I don't know what her name was, but this is, Dr. Margaret Gale was a blessing in my life. And her life is quite fantastical and very fairy tale-like. And I tried very hard to get some hard evidence of the stories that she told me as a child, and everything that I found was behind a paywall and trying to get to this like references for this presentation. And I just ran out of time to pay for the like free 7-day trial to get past the paywall. So I apologize, but these are the stories she told me. She had come to the city that I grew up in, coming from being a professor at USC. And she came to our city. I lived about 2 hours away from LA at the time. And she had gotten mugged. I don't know if you know what that means. Like a gang member came and tried to rob her and beat her so much that it was very not good, because she was walking to class, because USC is kind of in some scary parts of LA, so some of the buildings are. And so her son, who had a construction company in the town that I was living in, said, "You're done, you have to retire, you have to come live in Bakersfield," which is not a greatest city either. I was going to school with gang members myself and all of that stuff, but it was better than LA. And as you can see, she was kind of old at that point. And we got connected to her because she just happened to go to my dad for dental work. And my dad will tell you that she still had cement in her teeth until the day she died from that mugging, okay? Which was absolutely horrible. We have no idea where she got her music degrees. So I don't know. And I don't know what they're in, because I moved when I was 13. And so some of these stories are from, an 8 to 13-year-old perspective. And I asked my older sister and my mom, and they kind of corroborated some of our stories. But when she was young, and again, I don't know where she was living at that point. It may have been California, it may have been New York. But somebody told her parents, "Your daughter's really talented, and so you have to send her to Europe." And so her parents sent her to Europe, and she lived with her piano teacher. I'm not a parent, but as a parent, I think that takes a lot. And again, apocryphal, that piano teacher, we don't know what their name was, but they were a student of Paderewski's. So again, who knows? Well, we're not sure. And she was one of the best storytellers ever. Like, I still tell the stories to my students that she told me when I was 8 to 13 years old. And part of it is because she kind of lived it. Like, she lived that history. She was a touring pianist. And again, not totally sure how long she was a touring pianist. She told me her first public concert was 1 hour of playing all 60 Hanon exercises. That puts a little pressure on you as an 8-year-old, as the student, right? And she told us fun stories, like she always got to have 2 copies of the same formal that she was performing in, because they would always change at intermission, because this was before air conditioning, and they would sweat through their dresses. So she always had 2 copies of every dress. So that was always kind of fun, like to hear those little things. And also, there was a story that she got to play with Rachmaninoff at some point, and different things like that, but who knows what that means. Was it a master class? Was that she was a 10-year-old kid and he went do-do-do-do-do, and she went do-do-do, and they were done? I don't know. Because I wish, unfortunately she's passed away now, I can't come back and say, "Dr. Kale, tell me all your stories, please, as an adult, so that I can remember them." And unfortunately, her two children were not musicians, and they didn't even write her an obituary, which is quite sad. So someday that might be some doctoral project or something, I don't know. Okay, so I learned a lot, and I started learning about music history from my teacher, and she kind of started me on this crazy music teacher path. Yes. Oh, sorry. Okay. Now, some of the stories that I still tell that I remember her talking about is about the Children's Corner Suite by Debussy. I don't know how many of you are familiar with that set of pieces. It's pretty popular because it's really fun music. But Debussy wrote a set of pieces for his daughter, whose real name, I had to look it up, is Claude Emma, but everybody knows her as Shoo Shoo. So in my brain, I just always call her Shoo Shoo, and everybody else did. She did tragically pass away when she was about 13, but he was a very devoted father to her. Not so much his partners, but to her, he was. And he wrote this set of pieces, and most of the pieces are based off of one of her stuffed animals. So one of my very favoriteest piece is called Jimbo's Lullaby, which is based off of a stuffed elephant. How cute. Now, I'm also, you can take this or leave this. There's been a very big debate about this. The last piece in this set is called Gollywog's Cakewalk. Have you guys ever looked up what a gollywog was? I'm of the opinion that I'm an educator and I teach hard truths. And I believe that if we don't ever teach the hard truths, then we potentially will repeat history. And so when I let students play that piece, because many professors and music teachers are like, we need to take that out of the repertoire. It's such a great piece though, and it teaches some really cool advanced techniques in not such an advanced piece. Like, it's not so hard that our junior high or high school kids can't be playing that. But if my students play that piece, they know what a gollywog is, they've seen what a gollywog is, and we've talked about the difficulties about that history and why we are working on this and we are treating this history with sensitivity, okay? And so, something to think about. Are you gonna be a teacher that teaches the hard topics, or are you gonna just not? And it's okay if you're not, that's okay too. Not everybody feels super comfortable with that. Okay, now, I absolutely thought that this was funny that Mark mentioned Bartók, because I will say Bartók is one of my favorites. And that's because Dr. Dean made me play it as a 13 or 14-year-old when I moved to his studio when we moved here to St. George. And so throughout my life, I have done quite a bit of research on Bartók and his life and all of that stuff. So we can talk about stories about the pieces, but we can also tell stories about the composers and their life in our music lessons. Bartók was a very cool, interesting person. He spent a lot of time outdoors, climbing mountains and hiking through the hills of Bulgaria and Hungary and Romania and Slovakia, and he collected their folk songs. So he would go, knock on their door and say, hey, do you got a song for me? And sometimes he'd be pulling around this ginormous gramophone and he'd record it. He'd record some 85-year-old grandma sing some song that she learned when she was 5. And so we have this huge archive of folk songs from his studies and his works. So a lot of his music is actually inspired by the folk songs that he heard, or he actually was quite a naturalist in many forms. He liked bugs, he liked like flora and fauna and things like that, but he was also a nudist. I'm just checking up on my facts and things like that. There is on the Hungarian National Archive for Bartók, there's a little snippet. One of his adult students was next door from his family home teaching a piano lesson to one of his students. She looks out the window and he and his whole family are nude in their front yard. So everybody's got an interesting, weird, cool story. But we hear a lot of nature in his pieces. And I'm not sure, have you ever heard The Grasshopper's Wedding? What a great title! Especially for our middle-aged kids, meaning 10 to 15-year-olds. Man, are they hard to connect to sometimes. But doesn't your brain just, well, okay, again, I'm kind of a nerd, but my brain goes crazy when I hear Grasshopper's Wedding. And I see all these little things and who's coming to the wedding and how are they dressed up, or, are the mosquitoes invited or are they not invited, or things like that. So I thought we'd listen to just a couple of snippets of a cute girl playing. So this is also not typical Bartók in that it's loud and bangy and not harmonic. It's quite cute. It has some really nice ledger line notes that helps them read ledger lines, and it also has some really nice 16th notes in it that are not difficult. It's just 8/16, 8/16. So they learn a little bit of more difficult rhythm, and not super hard. And so there's a little snippet of, so look for music that has stories in the piece that you can create with your students. Okay, let's go to the next one. Now this is a super random slide. This is also based on Bartók. When I was a sophomore in college, I decided to learn all 6 of the Bulgarian dances, which is in his last volume of Mikrokosmos, because I learned 1 or 2 with Dr. Dean, and then I wanted to learn the rest of them. And one of the pieces was just giving me the hardest time of memorizing. I just could not memorize it. Not that that's an unusual story for me, but it was hard. And so my professor at the time said, you've got to come up with a story, and that story has to have an event in every single measure that you play. So I came up with the most elaborate story of a little boy going to a carnival in the 1920s, and I can still tell you that he entered, and okay, this is a long time ago, this was 23 years ago that I was doing this, and I still remember this story. He paid 5 cents for his ticket, he went over, he did the rings on the bowling ball pins, he went and played and went 2 cents, and he got to see the lady, the bearded lady. He loved that one, that was so cool. And he went and did all of these different activities, and I could tell you the whole story to this day, because that is what helped me memorize and connect to that particular piece. So storytelling in form of helping your students memorize. Now, could I play that piece memorized today? No. Can I remember the story? Yes. I'm not that kind of musician, but it can help your students find passion and connection. And it can be literally anything. I have a student right now, she's in 8th grade, and when she did Let's Play Music when she was little, for whatever reason, every time they asked her to write or draw a picture, she always draw a sheep of some kind. Sheep jumping, sheep sleeping, sheep doing something. And I asked her to make up a piece for her performance piece right now, and she's like, I'm gonna do sheep again. So my student is going to go to AIM performance evaluations, and the judge is going to see, and the sheep jumped over the fence, and it is written in her music. And she just thinks that that is just the funnest thing, that she gets to connect with her childhood again. Not that she's not a child, but she's a little older now. And it just brings her joy that she gets to bring back that memory of sheep stories in the piece that she's playing nowadays. Okay, now this is kind of a really personal story, and this will show you how old I am because I didn't have a cell phone that had a camera or a video on it at the time. In fact, I'm not sure I even had the cool Nokia that was shown earlier today. I had the knockoff brick version at this point. When I was a sophomore in college for a summer job, and then it kind of went into the next school year, I started working at an after-school program in Salt Lake City. And it was right downtown Salt Lake City, and we had a lot of immigrants coming to that school. And many of them were coming from Rwanda, and some were coming from Latin America, various things. And we would get to spend 2 or 3 hours with them after school so that their parents could come and pick them up after work instead of having to leave work to pick them up and various things, okay? And it just so happened I was working on my Bar Talk program, and I met this girl, and I should have written it down. I don't know what her name was. She was 8 years old, and she said, "My family just moved from Bulgaria this summer." And I went, "No." And I said, "Do you know who Bar Talk is?" And she lit up like a Christmas tree. She's like, "Bar Talk is one of our national heroes. I love Bar Talk's music." And then she said, "Can I dance for you?" And I said, "Yes, please." And so I played one of my Bar Talk pieces for her, and she danced for me. Man, do I wish I had a video of that, but that was pre-coolness, folks. Okay, so I wanted to show you just a little snippet of maybe what that dance kind of looked like. Because what's very cool about that part of the world is that they are known for having, different people call this different things like additive meter or uneven meters or polyrhythm meter or something, whatever. It's where you feel short beats and long beats. So in this particular piece, they feel short, 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 long. Short, 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 long. And I'm certainly not doing their folk dances any favors by doing that in front of you. But you'll hear, it's a little hard to hear, but these are 1, 2, 3, long. And you'll see them kind of jump a little bit or pause in their dance. Here's a little how cool to have a community event where like little ones and adults are all exchanging culture. One of the reasons I put this in my slide was so much of our literature is based in dance. Do you ever show your students what the dance actually looks like? YouTube is so cool. It is such an awesome resource. You can actually show them what a minuet looks like. And I tend to try to pick the videos where people are wearing like authentic clothing and costuming of whatever time period we're talking about. And I'm just gonna put a little little tech snippet in for you. I don't know if you know this, but if you actually embed a YouTube video into a Google slide, it gets rid of all of your ads for you. So I have made this random Google Slides presentation that has every dance video and every, again, I told you I'm a history nerd, Baroque instrument possible and everything else. And so when it shows up, I'm like, oh, let's go and let's watch that video. I don't have to worry about ads or scandalizing my children in some way or other with ads or other things that pop up. And so think about sharing dances with them, whatever culture their dance is from. So many of my students, I've played like flamenco things for them, and I'm like, what's that, right? They have no cultural concept of any of these basic music things that we just take for granted a lot of times. Okay, now, culture here in southern Utah. I don't know if you're aware, but we have 5 Native American nations in Utah. And in southern Utah, we have a couple of different tribes that live around here, or nations, and then we have part of the Navajo reservation in Utah, and then it's quite large. It goes into Arizona and New Mexico and a little bit in Colorado and things like that. Do your students know about this culture at all? I am not an expert, but I had an experience with a student that told me, because at least here in St. George, we have soccer fields that are actually on the Shivwits reservation. And our students are going over there and playing soccer, and they have no idea what a reservation is. They have no idea what the word Shivwits means or anything else. So maybe you have some family connections like I do. I don't know, maybe you don't. But one of the cool things in Navajo life and culture is weaving, okay? Now, the 3 rugs that I brought today, this one that has cute people is actually Hopi, and Hopi is a little bit more towards eastern Utah, Colorado part of the world. And then these 2 are actually, I can't say it, but they're actually from Mexico, but they very much look like Navajo weaving as well. And I just happened to have a little bit of connection with that because my grandpa was one of the construction companies in St. George for a very long time, in the mid-1900s. And he had a lumber yard. He owned one of the cinder block plants and all of that stuff, materials to make your home. And with that, he also was an employer to a lot of Native Americans who would come in from the reservation and ask for jobs that they could do, just daily one-off jobs just to make a little money here or there or whatever. And I had an aunt who lived in New Mexico, and so he would travel through the reservation a lot to go see her in New Mexico, and he was a collector/hoarder. And every time he went, he loved wheeling and dealing, and you can still even do this. Have any of you been to Monument Valley lately? I went a couple of years ago, and there were artisans out selling their wares in Monument Valley who live there. And it was like kind of like a super bloom summer, and they were like, we've never seen the valley look like this before. How cool is that? With so many flowers and things like that. And so my grandpa would buy rugs and different, he would buy pottery and rugs and all kinds of things from these artisans. And I want to also recognize that arts support arts. Different forms of art affect the forms of art that we are doing. And sometimes the way we think about our art is helpful if we go outside of just the music world, or like Mark was the inner game of tennis, right? Sports psychology crosses over into the music psychology and performance psychology a lot. BYU has a great website that has tons and tons of lesson plans on the 5 Native American nations in Utah. And I'll give you access to this slide, and so you can go into that link or whatever. But this is just a little snippet of a Navajo or Dene weaver. They actually don't really prefer the word Navajo. They actually prefer being known as the Dene tribe or the Dene people. And I want you to think about how she's talking about her weaving and how do we say those same things in the world of music.
Really powerful moment where I just realized that anything beautiful and worthwhile just takes time, it takes patience, it takes diligence, it takes persistence. And at that moment I decided I was going to try it again. And I had learned how to weave before my car accident.
She was in a car accident and lost one of her
how
arms.
to do it again. Because I cannot weave like a traditional weaver. It takes the use of both hands in order to pull a portion. It's called a heddle. You pull back the back warp string so that you can put the batten through to open up the way to put the wool. And so I had to learn to adjust and figure it out. I have to weave on the floor just like a traditional weaver, and it's because the way in which I pull back the heddle, which is the stick that holds the back warps, is I have to use my feet. It's a very intricate process. It's a very time-consuming process. Everything from raising the sheep to shearing the wool and taking that wool and cleaning it and carding it and getting out all of the debris or dirt and just getting it all laid straight so that they can go then and spin it into the strands that is the wool that you weave with. And then even beyond that, the process of setting up the loom is just it's a process that you need to sit down and you need to commit to and not have interruptions, because again, this is another little life lesson that I've learned from it. Like, if you set it up correctly, if you put in the time and effort to lay that foundation, so to speak, of having a very solid warping, a very solid base to your weaving, you're not going to have as many problems in the future as if you just did it haphazardly. I truly believe that Navajo weavers were mathematical geniuses, to be able to think about those shapes.
Okay, again, it's a very beautiful 10-minute video that you can go and watch, but I just wanted to give you a taste. Did some of the things she said make you go, oh, we do that, or, oh, maybe I need to say that differently in my own lessons, a little bit more like she said it in the preparation parts of getting to learn a piece. We need to maybe prepare more than we do sometimes. Okay, and then we have a pretty cool new composer on the scenes. His name is Connor Chi, and he is from the Navajo Reservation, but at age 10, he moved to Cincinnati, Ohio, and since then has gotten degrees from the Eastman School of Music and the Cincinnati College Conservatory. And he has a new book, actually several books out that have come out, of piano compositions that are based on the traditions of the Dene people, or the Navajo people. And this is a way that we can encourage our students, and they're very nice intermediate pieces. That was the music that I was playing before the presentation started. Here's a book that if you want to look at it and see that I just bought. But one of his newer collections actually has a piece titled Weaving. So you could have this great collaborative lesson about weaving or whatever topic, and there's actually some really cool music lessons on the BYU website, and explore this music making style or whatever, and then share a little bit of Navajo or Paiute or Ute history as well. So we'll hear just a little bit of the weaving piece. And his YouTube channel is really cool. Yeah, because it's all this beautiful photography from the reservation. And it's super gorgeous.
That's awesome.
Yeah, and he has, a lot of times he's wearing native jewelry in his YouTube videos and things like that. So cool story about my necklace. This why I'm wearing it today. This is not a normal attire kind of thing that I personally wear, but as part of storytelling and things like that, I want you to think about family history or experiences that you have had with different cultures and how you can share them with your students. But this necklace came about because a person who was living on the res came and worked for my grandpa for a little bit, and then he said, I need cinder blocks to build my wife a house. And my grandpa's like, okay, let's get you going, let's get you what you need. And about 6 months to a year later, he still hadn't been paid for the cinder blocks. And so he was going through the res to go visit my aunt, and he stopped by the house. I don't know if you've ever driven out on the reservation, but it's not like going to block 100 south and 200 east, like, you know, it's pretty far out. My grandpa had an internal GPS like nobody. It was crazy. Partially because I think he drove the res a lot. But he went and he's like, okay, are you gonna pay me for your house? You know, and things like that. And the person said, I have absolutely nothing to give you of value except this necklace that I have made. Will you take payment in form of this necklace? And so my grandpa's like, yeah, okay, here we go. Now, he wasn't that generous that he didn't take anything, but he did barter and allow that to happen. And that was a long time ago when bartering was a much bigger deal. But kind of cool history that I can share with my students, and I can show them rugs and things like that. But I bet you guys have things in your own home that are family heirlooms, or that little trinkets that you've gotten from travels or things like that, that you could probably share in your lessons. And my question to you is, are you sharing them, right? Because just that personal connection makes a lot of difference sometimes in whether kids or students will go along with what you want them to learn. Okay, next thing. Now the question is, how? I find this so hard to grasp because growing up, we always had music. I remember the day that my dad brought home our first CD player. And that summer, we spent the entire summer listening to Phantom of the Opera and canning the tomatoes and the apricots and the plums, okay? And we had that thing memorized from beginning to the end that summer. Our students nowadays aren't listening to music very much. And they're certainly not listening to classical music very much. Because I think getting music to our students is hard. Parents don't want their students listening to streaming services because then it's free. Those kids can get into whatever kind of music that they want to because our students are smarter than we are with technology 100% of the time. And they can get around things. So how do we encourage our students to listen more to classical music or just music in general? I was a little spicy the other day, and I grabbed one of my 12-year-old's phones and I said, I'm gonna fix your Apple Music, and I put in 20 pianists' names, and he's like, you just ruined my, what's it called?
Algorithm.
Yes, you ruined my algorithm! I'm like, yes, I did. Because I mean like that. But do you have group classes? Do you ever listen to music in group classes? Summer projects. Choosing, I always do like some weird summer project for my kids that we don't do for the rest of the year. So I think this year it's going to be music listening. And then do you use it to help you choose repertoire for your students? I think this sometimes is a little easier if you have older students like in high school where they're actually playing repertoire that's actually recorded. But YouTube is super great for that. Bless the Asian parents of this world. They have put every recital performance of their children on YouTube by the name of the piece, so you can find anything. It may be good, it may not be good, but it's there, right? Like, I'm so grateful for those parents who are willing to put that out there on the web, because it's so helpful for me when picking repertoire for students. And then also polishing our pieces. Do you ever go back and listen? Okay. And then something else, this is my cute student, his name is Timothy. Sometimes we do call him Little Tim because he literally is little, but he's actually like 11, even though he looks like he's maybe 8. Do you have a music listening station in your home? I have so many siblings that have to sit there through their siblings' lesson. This is so helpful to keep them good and engaged in good things. So I have Google Slides set up, and I have different levels, and there's 30 videos that they can watch, okay? And then some other things, do your families do it while they're doing chores. Last weekend I had a whole bunch of teachers at my house grading tests, and they're like, oh, we love your music, it makes us work harder. And I'm like, I know, I did that on purpose, because I always work harder when there's music going on. And then, are your families attending concerts and musical events? I think you'd be very surprised at how many of them have not. It breaks my heart every semester in college when I get 20 out of 30 students telling me, that was so cool. I've never been in the same room as a musician before playing their instrument. That's kind of out of our realm of thinking, but that is experiencing something that is so cool, and our students aren't experiencing it very much anymore. Time, oh, I totally have to get done. Okay. Themed playlists are also a really great thing. Make them on YouTube, make them on Spotify, Apple Music, whatever is available to you. This was not my idea, but another music teachers in the state censored or banned music by governments. Super cool topic. And then, I'm gonna let you listen to like 30 seconds of this. This woman, it is a little bit apocryphal or fairy tale-ish, but she was in France during the Reign of Terror, and they were going to chop her head off, but they said, if you can impress us with something, maybe we won't chop your head off. And so she proceeded to play a theme and variations improvised of La Marseillaise, their national anthem, and it impressed them so much that they didn't chop her head off. This is not that, but this is another piece. Who knew? Have you ever heard of Hélène? I'm so bad at French. Mongereau? Have you ever heard of her? Cool. This could very easily be on a college recital or high school. Yeah, sorry. There's a taste for you. And then some other ideas. Have you ever flown around the world with your students in music and learned about different composers and things like that? And hopefully I did a little taste of that for you today. And then next, do you have a soundtrack of your life? I think my students would be very surprised to know that you betcha Alicia Keys is on my soundtrack for my life. I have seen her live. I love her. I love Will Smith. Because I grew up in LA-ish area in the 80s. Hello, right? But they see white girl, Utah. They don't think about that very much. but you might be surprised to share some of that with some of your students, and they can share back what they're listening to. I learn cool new artists every semester from my college kids because I ask them what their favorite music is. You can't know everything that's out there today, but if you ask your students, they'll give it to you. And then another way is compare performers. Not as in who's better, but what did you like in this measure from this guy versus this person? Or what did you like in this measure of this guy versus this person? Okay, next one. And then, do your students have a someday list? That's a good one. And then, I'm sorry, I told Dr. Alred that I would not plug UMTA as much as I did in, a month ago when I gave this, and I know Patrice has already plugged UMTA a lot, but I'm just going to give one teeny tiny plug. If you become a member of UMTA, you get access to the AIM curriculum, which is Achievement in Music. And it is a 10-level testing program that you can participate in, but you don't have to get the materials. You just have to be a member of UMTA to get access to the materials. And one of the really cool parts about it is a music listening log. Will you click one more time? So we have, for each level, like 10 pages worth of listening samples picked for them with a QR code that takes them straight to YouTube. They listen to it, and then they write us a little note about what they thought about it. And it does include Baroque, Romantic, classical, and modern, but it also includes female composers and diverse composers as well to give our students more wide-ranging exposure from things. So something to think about, but certainly not, one more, not required. And then on the end, I also have just a list of some other resources that you might be interested in to look at and go find different resources and stories on your own. And I didn't know, maybe you're going to put this up on the website, I didn't know, but here's a QR code to the link to my slide presentation if you want it. Okay, I'm done. Sorry.